everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Modern Farming Podcast, brought to you by the Green Genes Foundation, where we cultivate agricultural excellence through education.
We're your hosts, Chris and Tara, and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.
Today we have another teacher to come into the studio and talk to us about the things they're doing with their classrooms in agriculture. Today's guest is Mr. Bert Johnson. He's a applied engineering and technology teacher at Melbourne High School in Brevard County. Welcome, Bert. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tara, for having me on. Born and raised in Philadelphia, and was kind of a city boy, but always had the little garden in the back of our house in the middle of the concrete jungle. And my mom really liked plants and stuff, so that kind of started me into plants. It's always been my interest to grow and kind of be out in nature as much as possible. I spent time in the Navy, doing a lot of different things, nuclear reactor operator, subs, and qualifying as a surface warfare officer. Left that, and I actually went into farming first. Fell in love with perch-around draft horses. Well, actually, I fell in love with the Clydesdales, and I figured that if Budweiser had Clydesdales, they were expensive. So let me find some other draft horse. But little did I know, they're all expensive. So I found out that I love the percherons and started farming and logging with percherons in Michigan. And a lot of fun moving in California. Had a carriage company and started doing other things because as we found people, brides and things like that, they wanted to know, well, you know anybody that does bird releases, dove releases? And they say, you know anybody that does monarch releases? So I was always the experienced kind of guy. Let me figure out how to do it. I started dove releases, which are really just white pigeons. I just started growing our own monarchs and started in monarch watch stations and stuff like that. It's just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it and came back home in Philadelphia, helped take care of my mom and started teaching school in earnest. I was a math teacher. I really like math and I enjoy math, but most of my students didn't. And I was working harder than they were. And I said, well, let me try to do something I like. So did computer science because I always enjoyed computers and networking. And, something said, well, let's go back to agriculture. Let's go back because it was really fun. I really learned a lot. Became an agriculture teacher. And so that's kind of how I got to where I'm at now. And even though I teach applied engineering technology, I use a platform of Aquaponics to teach students about engineering techniques, creating stuff, planning, product improvement, things like that, give them hands-on experience with welding and electrical and different stuff like that. So agriculture or natural resources were always a part of it. So that's where we're at now.
So you're teaching students how to produce their own food. Why do you think that's important that people know that?
We can control our food intake better quality, higher quality. That's just a better quality of life. And a lot of the problems that we have, I think, is from we're kind of fast food world. Every once in a while, it's okay. But I think if we get more food diversity and a little bit more food security for everyone, it will end up increasing the quality of life, which is very important.
I agree. We hear that a lot. How do we do it? Your approach is through education, right? You're teaching these kids. Do you feel it's working? Do you feel that what you're doing is helping people get to where they have a better quality of life?
It's a little frustrating because it's not dealing with younger folks, it's not a glamorous attraction. Just my students here at Mill High, most of them their parents are planning for them to go to college in some type of engineering, some type of doctor, some type of profession like that. It's not really growing in farming. And unfortunately here in this area of Florida, you don't really have the citrus groves anymore. And there's not very much farming actually here of food production. When you don't have control of your food, it's a real security issue. When I was teaching in Philadelphia, and I still believe it's the same now, the largest seed bank is controlled by a corporation. And by having that type of control over our future food and things like that, it's not very secure. You can really direct what food comes out, and because we're not all altruistic, I think making money has really gotten into being the sole driving thing in education and food, doing it for the increase of money instead of intending have people to have a better lifestyle. It compromises the whole reasons. You see that in education. We just need talk about GPAs. And I do understand the importance of it, but I let my students know, a GPA never roofed my house. It never put an electrical circuit in my house. It's not necessarily what you know, but what you can do. You take that learning experience and it gets to be difficult. My students definitely have difficulties in my class because I don't do fast food education. I don't teach you the sun is yellow and the sky is blue and come around at test time. And the two questions I ask you is, what color is the sun and what color is the sky? That takes nothing but memorization. It's no thinking, no knowledge or anything like that. So I require you to synthesize something. I may ask you why the sun is yellow or why the sky appears blue. And you have to think about the answer. I remember when I used to work for General Motors and they started putting robots on the line. And them shifts went from 3 shifts to 2 shifts to 1 shift. And everybody was there just to kind of fix the robots. So it's a different job. It's a different technique, takes different skills. And if you can't adapt, you're left out. That's the problem that you have. These farms, they're big farms. They're being managed by automation a lot more than what they were before. Luckily, they can't disseminate, which tomato to pick or, that kind of stuff, but it's not far away. So there are some manual things that will still happen. So you have to be able to see which way the wind blow and adapt. And our education system is not like that. It's not like that. And that's very, very dangerous because we give people education and we don't feed people jobs. We don't show them how you get jobs. So why give them the education just for education's sake? That's some of the things that we have to look at. I would rather see a person learn content and how to think and how to come to an answer than just how to do well on the test.
And you said the word is passion, because you get those teachers that want to do it because they're passionate about what they can teach the children. And we all migrate to those teachers for that inspiration.
But the parents have to support that teacher. My principal told me a long time ago, it takes 3 legs to make this stool work. It's the teacher, it's the parent, and the student. And if you don't get those 3 legs cooperate, you're not sitting down.
So you strive to do that through hands-on learning. I think one teacher we had said, people don't understand the best way to teach. You have to let people fail and get better on their own. How do you institute that in your learning? How do you work it so that it's not just memorization and try to get an A?
You can ask any of my students, they'll say, Mr. Johnson doesn't teach. Okay. And it's funny, as I'll have parents come in and say, they say you don't teach. It's like, okay, all right, no problem. Because it's one of those things that I question their questions. For example, they're supposed to have a certain video that they're going to get a skill from. We're doing computer aided drafting in 4 of my 6 classes right now, SolidWorks. And they had videos to look and see how they do it. But watching videos is just like watching TV. It's not even passive learning for a lot of these kids. This is just kind of to pass the time, just to go ahead and get through it so they can go through the test. Well, they don't learn. And a student will say to me, hey, Mr. Johnson, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm doing. And I was like, well, what do you want to do? I got to draw this part. I said, well, how do you draw the part? I don't know. Go back and watch the video. Go back and watch the video. They just want you to feed them the answer. And that's not how you're successful in this test, because there's nobody there that's going to feed you that answer when that question comes up on the test. So you're going to dig it. You're going to figure it out. You're going to learn. You're going to have problems, and it's not going to work. And that's where you go in and really, really figure out what you know and how to fix things. So until you actually go and try to draw a part and it doesn't work, then you have to go back and figure out, well, how come this doesn't work? And that's where you really learn the process. You learn more in failing than you do in being successful. So the learning happens, and you just have to be tough and take, okay, yeah, I don't teach them. And then they come out and they become independent, and they're like, they can transfer that skill. They can transfer that knowledge to something else that you've never done. And And, my first day in school, and kids don't understand it. They don't understand it at all. My first day of school, the thing is my job here is to teach myself out of a job. I said, because you have resources to learn so much more than what I can teach you right now, and skills to figure out how you learn. And then you can take that wherever you're at. Being an engineer, being a chemist, being a plumber. But, some of the smartest people I ever met were plumbers and farmers. Let me tell you, those guys, they are guys and females that they are really, really smart. They have forgotten more than a lot of people will ever know. And that's because they work it. They figure out what's wrong. So you have to stick to it and believe in your heart. You're doing the student a solid by being tough and making them do it.
So you're in essence teaching the kids how to learn.
That is definitely, and that's so easy to do in agriculture. And when you're successful in agriculture like that, it's an immediate feedback, because whatever you try to do, now you eat it. It is so satisfying to look at and say, you know what, I took that from this little seedling and now it's giving me this. And it's that kind of learning. Oh, this rabbit's a little sick. Well, what do I need to do to fix it? How do I help it? So you're learning more on your own. Not to date myself too much, but when I was going to school and we were younger, you had the library and the Dewey Decimal System, and if you were one of them rich ones, you had an encyclopedia set at home or a World Book encyclopedia, and that's how you did your research. Now, with the internet and so many different things, the world's open to you. And you don't take advantage of that to continually learn, be a lifelong learner, you are really doing yourself a disservice.
What I see in a lot of the passionate teachers that we have is that they have availability for the children to do different hands-on things. And I know from your classroom, you don't just have computers in there, and you don't just have the fish in there. You have all different kinds of instruments that the kids wouldn't always have the opportunity to put their hands on. And that also is something that I think that you bring uniquely to your class.
And thank you. I appreciate that. A lot of people see that, and funny, the first thing that they turn to is, Mr. Johnson, aren't you afraid these kids are going to steal this stuff? And just because of the relationship that we built and the expectations that we built, they understand this is for them.
Yep.
If they want to do something, they just ask. And Mr. Johnson, go ahead and do it. And as long as I kind of see that they're not trying to burn down the school or kill each other or something like that, you see some of the most intense learning, and sharing. And sometimes you got to make sure it's not being monopolized. Is let that person do it, whatever. And you'll see that cooperation and working with others, which Tara and Chris, you'll understand what it is to work in a team. So these are different skills that kids are learning. And all of this is just figuring out how we're going to do this. Well, what's the best way to do it? And I sit back and be critical, and I answer questions and say, hey, well, what about this? Or did you think about this? How are you going to fix this? And you can see them stop, and you can see their heads going and stuff like that. And it's just, the periods just go fast. The kids get upset. We got to stop now, and they understand how important that is. So it's the standard that you said. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with teaching. I said, that is definitely my new mantra. Whoever said it was really a very, very smart person, because that is definitely how my kids feel in relationships. And that takes time. That takes time, and it takes responsibility, because none of us are perfect, and they watch you, and it becomes real. It makes it a pleasure teaching. It really, really does. Even in messing up, kids will come say, Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry I messed up. And say, well, what you learn out of that? So what should you have done? So you turn everything into a learning experience as much as you can. That's a rewarding thing. That is totally why I teach.
Kids will respond to adults who show them caring, right? They respond much more to caring than they do to pressure or demand or instruction, right?
Yes.
But you have to get the ones that'll stick through it and see to it, right? It does take a certain attitude.
It's funny you say that, because 15% of our students will do well anywhere. Mm-hmm. 15% of the students, unfortunately, need to be in a little different situation, a little bit more stringent, environment, things like that. So it's up to me as a teacher, which 15% is going to influence the 70%. And I always make sure it's the upper 15% influence the 70%. And then what happens is that bottom 15%, some of them start to change. Then education really happens. Really, really happens. They learn.
So I know you're teaching aquaponics in your lab. What is it that kids learn about agriculture today and growing their own food?
One of the things that I find is a learning platform or learning concept that you can use to present other stuff. And aquaponics just happened to be the tool. We learn how to design it. We learn how to engineer it so it works and functions, does what it knows to do. We actually learn how to manufacture it. We learn the requirements and the goals and what the purpose and mission is for. But all of that is around grow food, and it's to grow fish, and this is what it is. So it's not really that they're learning aquaponics. We're just kind of using aquaponics to be able to do the applied engineering. They really, really love the fish. They love the different types of fish. They love coming in and seeing things, and they love having their friends come in to see Mr. Johnson, can I bring him in? Yeah, and because it's like, this is in our class. This is what we do, So they learn about the different types of fish. We've had octopus here. So how do we maintain that living environment? How do we maintain that? It's getting too hot. Okay, how do we control the temperature and stuff? Well, we can do this. Okay, here's the parts. Build it. Make it happen. So we're using aquaponics as the basics to the rig to learn engineering topics and ideas and things like that. And it really, really does work. The kids like it. They're learning about agriculture because they're like, Mr. Johnson, can we grow this? It's like, well, what's the requirements? So what do we have here? This is going to be a wet environment. Can it survive in a wet environment? So they're doing research. They're doing all this kind of stuff. And instead of me just saying yes or no, I make them do the work. They'll come back and they're happy. Mr. Johnson, we can do this, we can do that. I said, well, how's it normally grown? Grown in the ground. How much room does it take? That kind of stuff. Do we have the lighting that we can do it? So they're going through that whole process. They're going through all of that inquiry, and they're coming up with a solution. Right now, we're getting into 3D printing a lot of stuff that we need because we got 2 3D printers. And it's funny, I just had a procedure on my foot. So when the kid asked, well, how come you were out of school? I said, well, because I got this. Well, I said, what's wrong? You walk kind of funny. And I explained to him. He went on SolidWorks and created a kind of a cast, which was just a piece of plastic, and it had a finger come out that was narrower than my toe. And I went back to the doctor, and the doctor was able to just wrap that finger around the toe and straighten it out with cushion underneath. And it was like, where'd you get this from? I said, one of my kids made it. And he laughed. Said, go get it patent real quick. But it was just amazing how they took that process, and they weren't doing it for a grade. They were just doing it because it was interesting. So it was like they've taken something and applied it to other stuff. And it's like we needed some braces to hold the plants up and stuff. Well, we can do this, we can do that, and they just go out and do it. So not only are we learning agriculture, we're learning how to be producers and organizers and creators, which is a good thing.
I thought we had heard all the things that could have possibly been done with aquaculture and the aquaponic systems. And you've come up with a completely different way from anyone we've ever heard. It's super cool. You're using the growing as the byproduct for teaching kids how to do this stuff and make this stuff.
The beauty of this is that it's cross-curricular. The art kids would come down and they would draw the changes in the grow bed from week to week. The math kids would come down and they would look at the feed rate. This fish should be weighing this much with this much feed, and they're doing that. I even had the little kids from next door. They would come in and plant our starts. We had our video people come down, and they were making a series of videos. They're growing and what the kids were doing, and student-based enterprise, which I plan on doing here, where they're actually learning how to, you're kind of breaking even with the fish, but you should be making money on what you're growing and stuff. So the more people that you can get involved in these things, the better it is. One of the things we want to do was to build the 4x4 units that I used to build in Philadelphia. So we can put them in the different schools, and they love showing their parents how smart they are and what they're doing and what they're learning. And parents are walking away going like, wow.
Any last thoughts you want to leave the listeners as we wrap up?
I think people need to have a positive stake in public education. I believe we really, really need to learn how to respect teachers as a profession, and you'll attract a better quality. Not that it's so bad right now, but you have to realize that when I was young, bread was 25 cents a loaf. And, the three types of gas was unleaded, leaded, and premium, supreme. And that was 15, 17 cents a gallon, depending on where it was. What is it going to be when they get 30, 40 years from now? We need to invest more into getting skills for our children. And that happens only when supporting teachers for being professionals that they are. And you hold the bar high, and then you'll get high, and the people that can't get it, they'll weed out because they'll feel the pressure. Please support your schools, public, private, doesn't make any difference. It's all the educational process. And if you're not having your child learn, you are cheating them out of a future. All these A's, kids are going to realize they don't know anything. And what are you setting up to be? Make it sustainable. Make it worthwhile.
And that'll do it for this episode of Modern Farming. Thanks for watching.
So be sure to listen and follow us and share, and join us again as we are growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.